Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. All right. Good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number, this would be 532 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Today, recording day is Wednesday, December 11th, 2024. And I have no idea what kind of day it's going to be here at the Beaver Lodge because I can't see anything through the curtain. No light whatsoever again. We're in that time of year as we get close to the shortest day or longest night of the year. We're early in the morning. I don't see anything, and it'll probably be like that for about a month. And then I'll be able to tell by looking through my window because I have a curtain in front of it that lets a little bit of light through, but not too much. It's been a morning so far. I hope you can hear me and see me. I see something on my screen that says 153, so I'm guessing I am live, but all the monitors that I am watching have stopped functioning completely. So I actually do not know if I'm alive, if I'm live. It's been a very, 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 very weird tech morning. So I thank you, all our live listeners, kids and cubs, for your patience as we get started nearly half an hour late. So I now very much understand Mr. Grizzly when he has these mornings where absolutely nothing seems to be cooperating in any way, shape, or form. And still, nothing is cooperating right now. I am stretching because everything is frozen and I actually do not have access to my notes. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver. And not with me, as you can tell, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. The light here, if you're going to see, is going to do some more things because I am just going to completely reboot the main computer because it is not cooperated once on anything in the past half hour. And I've given up trying to coax and cajole it. And it won't even shut down right. So I'm, it's one of those days. Pardon me while I move the camera in order to be able to override. All right, there we go. Not my most professional show. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. And Kits and Cubs, if you believe that I am rattled, yes, I am. I'm actually really, really rattled right now. Because everything has gone wrong and I don't have any notes. And tech is still not cooperating, and I've never attempted to do a show live while having no notes and no tech. So I am really, really, really thrown at the moment, and to be completely honest, I don't know what to do. But I will try my best. And now I just have a computer that won't reboot. So sorry. Okay, let's. What can we talk about today? Well, let's start with some stuff going on. Some Canadians of whom we can be proud. Currently, the World Short Course Swimming Championships are going on in Budapest, Hungary, I believe, and our Canadian swim team, uh, which was extremely impressive at the Olympics in Paris, bringing home a very significant portion of our total medal haul, is in competition there. And yesterday was the first day, and the team came out swinging, kits and cubs. Um, First, Summer McIntosh, of course, was participating in the 400-meter free in the final. And it's summer and December, folks. She won the gold medal in the short course 400-meter free, and breaking a world record in the process. But surprise, it was a double podium for Canada, because Mary Sophie Harvey, who had an exceptionally good Olympics, tons of personal bests by a lot, and really doing her bit to help the relays. Um, well, she got her first individual uh, world championship medal, taking the bronze. So it was gold and silver for Canada in the women's 400 freestyle at the World Short Course Swimming Championships. Then, in addition to that, uh, for Canadian women, Penny Oleksiak, Ingrid Wilm, Mary Sophie Harvey again, and Summer McIntosh again, swam in the 4x100-meter freestyle relay, which they had qualified for the final, but originally were going to scratch to save some energy, because it was the first day of the meet, and it's a multi-day meet. And but they decided, yeah, you know what, we're feeling good, let's do it anyway. And they won a bronze. So that's pretty good. And then Finley Knox, I think it was the 200 IM, if I am not mistaken, in that one. Might be the 200-meter free. But came in the pool, and he as well took a bronze. So, and then I believe we had the women's 100-meter back. I think we were at the semifinal stage, and both Ingrid Wilm and Kylie Mass qualified for the final there. So a really, really good first day for Team Canada at the World Short Course Swimming Championships. And usually when a team gets off to a start that's that good, there's a mood that kind of permeates the team and sort of buoys it. And so it might lift the whole team. So this might end up being a very, very, very good and rewarding World Championships for Team Canada, with such a great start on day one. So a lot of congratulations goes to them. Finally, everything is running as it should, kits and cubs. I actually see myself on the screens, and I see you and the comments coming in. And yes, and I believe I will have access to my notes. Yes, I do. Or at least the computer is responsive. So that is good stuff. But yeah, speaking of good stuff, like I said, all these results from Team Canada on the first day, it's just incredibly spectacular. This team is incredibly, incredibly impressive. And I think last Olympics was the first year, really, where you could see the full potential, because you still had the veterans like Penny Alexiak and Kylie Mass, lending a hand where it was needed. And then you had some up and comers like Ingrid Wilm and Mary Sophie Harvey having just incredible performances, incredible performances, personal bests. And then the men started getting in on it too, with Josh Liendo and Finley Knox and Ilya Kulin. And so this team there are going to be a lot of these names that are going to be on the team for maybe one or two more um, Olympic cycles. So we have a lot of good stuff to look forward to. And if they have that capacity when they, start to get good, to have more people come and then train them, which is what happened to us in tennis. Um, we started to have some good results, and then more and more people are starting to join and want to play because, as the saying goes, once you see it, you can be it. And then there's a lot of people that would want to be it and are knowing that that it's possible for a Canadian to have this success because they see it. So this could be the start of a bit of a little bit of a dynasty if Swimming Canada is able to manage this well and bring in the new talent, recruit it, create a safe sporting environment, and bring them along like they have brought this team, because clearly they have the coaching talent to be able to do this. Um, so yeah, really good things happening in Budapest for Team Canada, and definitely looking forward to seeing some more. And of course, it certainly doesn't hurt that our good friend Devin Haru is there poolside, bringing us the stories. And once again, Kits and Cubs, unfortunately, it seems that the universe is not liking me today because the computer has frozen again. And once again, I do not have access to notes. And I do not know why this is happening today, because there is literally the only thing open are my notes and the show. So there's nothing taxing the computer. It just will not cooperate today. All right, so I will keep winging it, hoping that my notes come back to me at some point. In addition to Canadians that are making us proud in the pool, yesterday, today, actually, I should say, the Bank of Canada will be making an interest decision rate for us. And there was an expectation until the last few weeks, really, that the rate cut would probably be 25 basis points. We were looking at 50 originally, and then we got some economic data come in and said, oh, well, maybe it'll be 25. But over the last little bit, we had a little more economic data come in that is showing, for example, GDP flat 2 months ago, and GDP, not 2 months ago, for August, I believe, and a GDP increase of only 0.1% for the following month, which is clearly not very strong economic growth, lowering a declining GDP per capita, which again, technically is not a thing, really. But it seems that media has bought in to Pierre mentioning it and raising it all the time. So now they're citing it in reports. But that has gone down for a sixth straight quarter, of course. If you have more people coming in and you have a flat GDP, you're going to have a GDP per capita that's in decline. So that's, again, just math. We had job numbers come in recently, and the unemployment rate ticked up to, I believe it is 6.8%, which was not a significant jump, but it wasn't just like a 0.1 jump, right? It was I think it was about a 0.4% jump or something like that, or a 0.6% jump. And that's not because we're not producing jobs. We produced 51,000 jobs, which is a good number, but we have, a lot of people coming in, and a lot of people feeling more positive a bit about the economy, and therefore, when they're feeling more positive about the economy, um, they're signaling that they are interested and looking for work. So there is more people in the work field. Um, and then I believe, I think those were all the economic data that we've had recently. And then, of course, there's been similar data. There's been data in the United States where their job creation is very solid, but their unemployment rate also went up 0.1% because more people are looking as a result of the positive environment. So with those numbers, however, unemployment going up a little bit and, GDP rather flat, there is now a stronger case for a 0.5% rate cut this time around. So it's really actually in the air right now. Nobody could actually tell you one way or another what it is that I don't. I would say it's like a 50-50% chance of one or the other, but there will be a cut, at least announced today. So we will be keeping our eyes open for that, kids and cubs, and bringing you more information about it when we get it. If it does happen within the show, the period of the show, if the computer will allow me to check for updates during the show, then I will do that. Of course, I am, as you can tell by the light, I am rebooting another time, hoping that third time will be a charm. So we're expecting that today. Now, in other money matters, yesterday in the House of Commons, there was the debate about the supply estimates. And if I am not mistaken, my understanding is that the debate took place and that the measures were passed, so that the vote was held and that the measures passed. Hopefully, I will be able to double check that to make sure that that was indeed the case. But if that was the case, because there are money measures to it, and therefore it is a confidence vote, that would be yet another one that the Liberals have survived, despite PP swearing up and down and all around that he would do everything in his power to take down the government at every available opportunity. Of course, in this case, the government had the support of the NDP, which has whose leader, which is the leader of which, Jagmeet Singh, has gone on the record stating that he was not going to play Pierre's games and was probably never going to vote for any motion of non-confidence that Pierre himself would put up. I believe the Bloc did vote with the Conservatives, consistent with their statement after the Liberals declined the invitation to blow a $3.5 billion hole in the budget annually in perpetuity, in exchange for 6 extra months of life, by raising the OAS by 10% for senior citizens 65 to 74. And the Bloc Québécois, as I mentioned before in previous shows, knowing that the NDP is not going to vote for anything proposed by the Conservatives, can then vote non-confidence without any fear that there will actually be an election called, because they know the NDP will go the other way. So the very, very assured and assertive non-confidence votes by the Bloc Québécois are a bit of political theater and only made possible by their absolute complete certainty that the NDP won't flip. So that's what's going on over there. But yes, the estimates would have passed, and so that means that about $22 billion in new spending has been approved, which will be pretty important, because these are, how do you put it? It's money for things that have been declared rather critical and important. So it was very important that this money do get through. So uh, like I said, very, very positive that this has happened. Finance Minister Christopher Freeland also says that next week's fall economic statement will show the federal government hit its debt to GDP target last year, keeping Canada tied to its fiscal anchor. So I'm guessing we're still tied to at least one of the, I believe it was three specific that she had mentioned at the time. However, she did refuse to say whether the deficit would come in at $40 billion, the benchmark. She said last fall was crucial to keep Canada within its fiscal guardrails. Quote, I do expect that when we table the fall economic statement on Monday, the debt to GDP ratio for 2023-2024, which we put forward in the 2024 budget, will be met, she said when asked directly about the target. I chose my words with care because it is important to be clear with Canadians. It's important to be clear with capital markets. So if she chose her words with care and did not talk about the $40 billion guardrail, it probably is blown past. Now, if we are being fair, there's probably some additional savings in the budget from declining interest rate, so less money having had gone out to service the debt. However, this sort of GST holiday and stuff, that'll probably show up more in next year's numbers rather than this year's. And but for next year, let's put it this way, not so much for this year's budget, but for next year's budget, Pierre's going to go, they're going to blow the bank, they're going to blow the bank. But everybody is also asking for tons of money to be spent on the border to appease Trump. And you got all the premiers trying to play the role of prime minister saying, we absolutely need to meet that 2% target. Well, meeting that 2% target means an extra $42 billion per year in spending. And I'm hoping that the conservatives don't mean that that means they're going to take $42 billion out of programs. And then the premiers keep on asking for more money for health, and then more money for to handle, what we screwed up with in the immigration system, and for more housing. And so how are you supposed to be doing all of that? And they'll probably be asking more money for colleges and universities now that we have the immigration cap. And certain colleges are having trouble. Today it was announced that one of the flight school campuses in New Brunswick, the one that deals more or trains foreign students more, because they have two campuses, one for domestic students, and that one's not effective. But it's going to have to close down for this year. They're not going to open because of the caps. They're not getting their usual clients. I think Sheridan College here in Ontario has announced recently that they are wiping out a decent number of the programs because the students are not there and the money's not there. So the one of the things about this cap, about all these provincial premiers not abdicating the responsibility to properly fund colleges and universities and trade schools, anything that's post-secondary, right? And then relying on foreign students. And now, there's an immigration issue because there's a housing issue and all that kind of stuff. So we have to put a cap. And then, well, how are we going to fund our colleges? Well, you should have been funding their core mandate from the get-go and not relying on the additional revenue from foreign students. The additional revenue from foreign students should have been bonus money that you could have invested in the colleges to improve them somehow, but they shouldn't have been relied on for basic operational expenses. So one of the consequences is now that there are fewer programs and fewer quality programs and fewer choice for actual Canadian students because the premiers didn't fund the colleges and the universities, the trade schools the right way. So, they are losing some very quality programs at Sheridan College. And I think it's like about 20% of their courses or something like that are being eliminated. It's a really, really, really big number. How is it? Yeah, Sheridan College to suspend 40 programs and reduce staff. This is according to CBC News. Sheridan College says it is putting 40 programs on hold and laying off staff as it faces a dramatic drop in enrollment. The college estimates that it will have about 30% fewer students next year, resulting in a $112 million drop in revenue, according to a statement from its president, Janet Morrison. An additional 27 programs will undergo an efficiency review, Morrison said. These changes are required for Sheridan to remain a financially sustainable and vibrant community in response to chronic underfunding, changing government policies, and social, technological, and economic disruption. Sheridan will look different, but our commitment to learning, discovery, and engagement remains the same. The programs being suspended include 13 in the Faculty of Applied Science and Technology, because we need fewer people in applied science and technology, right, in a knowledge economy. 13 business programs, 6 in the Faculty of Animation, Arts and Design, 5 in the Faculty of Applied Health and Community Studies, because we need lots of that too, right? And 3 in Humanities and Social Sciences. Students who are currently enrolled in these programs will still be able to graduate, the college's website said. Sheridan College is the latest school to face financial challenges after the federal government announced a cap on study permits for international post-secondary students. The government has said the cap is meant to reduce the number of new students' visas by more than a third this year. Ottawa said it would approve approximately 360,000 undergraduate study permits for 2024, a 35% reduction from 2023. In September, the federal Liberal government said it would further slash the number of international student permits it issues by 10%. Deciding how to divvy up the allocation permits among post-secondary institutions is up to the provincial government, which announced in March that colleges would face the biggest drop in their international student numbers. The Ford government's 2024 budget revealed that Ontario's colleges will lose out on $3.1 billion in revenue over the next 2 years from the expected drop in international student enrollment. Think about that. $3.1 billion over the next 2 years. So let's say you split that exactly in half. A little over $1.5 billion every year that the provincial government is underfunding post-secondary education. Structurally underfunding it. Because the foreign kids will cover the spread. So they asked for more students. They asked for more workers at the end of COVID, but they didn't build the housing, and they didn't fund the post-secondary education, and they didn't fund the medical that was required to take care of them, even though they got a lot of money for it. And then they didn't direct 100% of the funds that they got targeted specifically for these things to these things. And then they all turn around, because it's 13 premiers, but let's say the 10 provincial ones, 10 against 1, and say, you know what? We can't agree on doing the job, and we can't agree on doing the job right, but the one thing we can all agree on is to leave this sucker holding the bag for our failures. It's ridiculous what's going on. The level of incompetence from our premiers is frightening. Frightening. And I mean, at this point, you have to think that it's willful. This is again, our premiers are the problem. So yeah, it seems that Dinah Smockham, who's a spokesperson for the Ontario Ministry of Colleges and Universities, said the province will continue to support the post-secondary sector to ensure students can get good paying in-demand jobs once they graduate. She pointed out that in February, the government announced a $1.3 billion boost to post-secondary funding spread out over the next 3 years. But the thing says that they've got a drop of $3.1 billion over 2 years. You need $3.1 billion over 2 years, and they're giving you 1.3 over 3. They're laughing at you. And you have to understand, right, that the two things you absolutely must need to have an economy that is doing well. You need a workforce that is healthy and ready to work. And you need a workforce that is as educated as possible to be able to give you the most value added for your work. And we are underfunding health, and we are underfunding education, particularly post-secondary education, and what's an ever-growing knowledge economy, a global knowledge economy. This is the future that our premiers are building for us right now. They are setting us up for failure about 10, 15 years from now. This is not positive. Man. Uh, I'm I'm so exhausted from these people refusing to do the job the right way. Now, apparently, according to the Globe and Mail, says, but apparently this was the Globe and Mail has reported, and CTV also has taken it, that there's apparently some tensions between Trudeau and Freeland, which has, of course, makes Polyev very happy. According to Rachel Aiello, national correspondent, revived talk of tensions between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland prompted new questions Tuesday about how big the federal deficit will be in next week's economic budget. She wants a large deficit of 40 billion. He, on the other hand, wants an even larger deficit on steroids, bigger than 40 billion. We know that Canadians are going to lose from all of this inflation, but which one of these two is going to win? Asked Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Asked. That word is that might be the inappropriate choice of verb there. Smirked Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre might be more appropriate. And he doesn't know any of these things for a fact. He's just saying stuff in that quote. Poilievre's prodding came amid a new report from the Globe and Mail citing unnamed sources that suggested the two are at odds over the economics of measures such as the 2-month GST pause and the in limbo $250 workers' benefit checks. So, why not just go to, of course. So we go to the Globe and Mail article, and of course, it is written by Mr. Knife himself, Robert Fife, with the help of Marika Walsh. Relations between the Prime Minister's office and the Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland have chilled as tensions grow over the push for politically strategic spending measures such as the GST holiday, multiple sources say, risking the minister missing her pledge to keep the deficit at or below $40.1 billion. The sources say the idea for a sales tax break on items such as toys, video games, Christmas trees, and alcohol was driven by the Prime Minister's office, as was the pledge to send $250 benefit checks to working Canadians who earned an income of up to $150,000 last year. The Finance Department viewed the $6.28 billion plan as fiscally unwise, with one source saying finance officials described the GST holiday as making little economic sense. The sales tax break has passed in the House of Commons, but the future of the $250 rebate remains unclear, with opposition parties making support for it contingent on it going to more people. Personal addition that I'm going to slide into here. The 6.28 billion plan being fiscally unwise is fiscally unwise in the sense that there are probably some way more better things that we can do that money structurally that would really improve materially the lives of people, rather than a $250 check and saving a couple of cents on the dollar for 2 months every time you go out and buy something, right? A daycare program that lasts and is there available for you throughout all the years that your child needs daycare will do more for you over the course of your lifetime than this, right? So, no, I don't know if funding daycare in the way that I'm talking about will cost exactly $6.28 billion or more, or whatnot. But putting the money to that, right, increasing more access would definitely give bigger benefit to certain people, like it's targeted, but for a way longer period of time in their life and in a way more meaningful manner. Um, but as for making little economic sense, considering that our GDP growth really is flat, a tiny bit of stimulus at this time would not necessarily be a bad thing economically. So it does make sense, but it's probably, not the best expenditure of money. And the $250 checks, the way that they were targeted, not particularly good in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, eh, but but as a theory, they do make some economic sense. The Globe and Mail spoke to 10 government insiders, high-ranking liberals, and former senior finance department officials. The Globe is not identifying the sources who were not authorized to speak publicly about the tensions between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office and Ms. Freeland and her department. 5 senior Liberal Party veterans and 3 political staffers confirmed that tensions have risen between Ms. Freeland's office and the PMO over spending. 2 of them said it's more pronounced since the summer, but a third source said they couldn't characterize just how serious the divisions were. Others described the relationship as healthy tensions between the finance minister and PMO and noted that it's common across governments. While it is not unusual to have tensions between finance ministers and the PMO, one senior liberal said the current dynamic appears to be similar to what happened with Miss Freeland's predecessor, Bill Morneau, before he departed the government in 2020. Mr. Morneau quit amid a public rift with Mr. Trudeau and his office following months of behind-the-scenes pushback from the former finance minister on the level of pandemic spending. None of the sources are suggesting, however, that the current tensions would lead to the same result as Mr. Morneau. Ms. Freeland has insisted that she intends to stay around and run in the next election. She has denied suggestions that she has been looking for work in the private sector. The sources said Mr. Trudeau's office has given internal direction for an aggressive and possibly costly policy agenda that delivers relief and support to Canadians facing waning purchasing power as a result of inflation. And we're not only facing decreasing purchasing power as a result of inflation, but as a result of a declining dollar with all the changes in the interest rates and all that kind of stuff. At the beginning of the year, our Canadian dollar was at around 76%. Right now it's at 76%, 76 cents to the US. Now it's at about 70 cents. And a lot of people are expecting, if the Bank of Canada does come in with a 0.5 rate, that might push it below 70 cents. So while inflation is decreasing on one hand, right, we also had the data on inflation that we went back up from 1.6 to 2%, which is, while 2% is the target and 1.6 was abnormally low, it's still an increase inflation, which again would provoke the Bank of Canada to make a cut. In this case, only because it's up to 2%. If it had gone from 2 to 2.4, the Bank of Canada might be a little more hesitant on a cut or considering a smaller cut. But since it was from abnormally low to normal, right? And principally based on the cost of gas, which is highly volatile. The bank will probably stay the course in some way. Now, again, the calls from the sectors of the economy that have been saying that the Bank of Canada is still behind the ball when it comes to rate cuts and should have been more aggressive earlier and could still afford to be aggressive. Well, that chorus is still out there, of course, supplying pressure from that side. Ms. Freeland pledged a year ago to keep the deficit capped at no more than $40.1 billion, a fiscal guardrail seen as an effort to quell fears that continued high government spending would fuel inflation. However, one of the sources, a senior government official, said while the government is focused on investment, Mr. Trudeau, just like Ms. Freeland, has no plans to spend to the point of triggering an interest rate hike or inflation. They said the government is trying to give Canadians as much support as possible within those limits. Mr. Trudeau and Ms. Freeland work as a team, the official said, adding the current tension is no different than the normal push and pull between finance and PMO. So if these last 2 paragraphs are the same, it would strike me then if there's any tension or debate and it's not tension at the level that would cause someone to say, listen, if you don't do this, I'm going to go because I'm not going to stake my reputation on this, as Morneau probably did, then they're probably discussing about the range within that range. So we know we can't go beyond this because we don't want to trigger inflation or interest rate hikes. So this now within this range, do we go to the higher end of the range or do we still stay to the lower end of the range? And you might be having some heated and passionate discussions because, again, budgeting is a game of trade-offs. When you choose to do something, you choose to spend money in one place, you're choosing not to spend it in some other places. And it's not like there's an overabundance of need. So, when you're budgeting, you are necessarily picking winners and losers. And it might be a case of one of the two not wanting to pick more losers in a political calculation. You never know. But it would seem to me that with all the other contextual information that we're getting, if it might be that type of tension, right? Which is, if somebody described it as healthy tension, I would tend to occur in this case. It would be, unless, the two people are not being kind to each other in the discussion, which does not seem to be the case here. Many experts, including Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Giroux, believe Ms. Freeland won't meet her promised deficit target set out in the spring budget. Mr. Giroux said the fiscal deficit is expected to come in at $46.4 billion in 2023-24. The final tally of last year's deficit will be confirmed when Ms. Freeland delivers her fiscal and economic update on Monday. Three of the Liberal sources also cited recent senior staff changes as contributing to the tensions. Ms. Freeland lost her chief of staff, Andrew Bevan, this fall after only a year in the job when he was appointed to the Liberals' national campaign director. Okay, I could see how that might tick someone off. Mr. Bevan, Chief of Staff to former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne, has a long history with Mr. Trudeau's senior team and is close with his Chief of Staff, Katie Telford. In Mr. Bevan's wake, Ms. Freeland's Deputy Chief of Staff, Shannon Zimmerman, has taken over the top post. She's a longtime Liberal staffer but does not have significant experience in the private sector or in senior levels of government. Sources say she also does not have the same clout within the PMO. The Globe and Mail reported in July, citing government sources, that Ms. Telford and other PMO officials viewed Ms. Freeland as ineffective in selling the government's economic policies, which have come under assault from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. The Prime Minister acknowledged after the Globe report that he has held talks with Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of Canada and Bank of England, to join the government. Mr. Carney, seen as a potential successor to Mr. Trudeau, has so far not taken up the offer. In September, Mr. Carney was tapped by Mr. Trudeau to chair a task force to help develop ideas for long-term economic growth and productivity. He was also asked to beat the fundraising drums for the Liberal Party, which has placed a distant second in fundraising efforts by the Conservatives. Ms. Freeland's fiscal update is expected to include new border security spending in response to President-elect Donald Trump's promise to impose 25% tariffs on products from Canada and Mexico until they take sufficient action on illegal crossings and drugs. The fiscal update has been delayed because the House of Commons has been gridlocked since September 26th as opposition parties demand the government hand over unredacted documents related to misspending at a green technology fund to the RCMP. Bob Fife. So, actually not as knifey as he can be, but a couple of things, framed to suggest, well, maybe it's the fact that we moved Andrew Bevan to the national campaign that ticked her off. I mean, he had only been there 1 year and they were just starting to get a groove on. It's like, sorry, I need him. You'll just have to deal. So, that little inference that maybe secretly she's seething or steaming as a result of that. And we have to be honest. Um, you know, when they're talking about being an effective communicator, listen, I personally think she is, but then I I'm more cerebral, and so she. So I get her, but I'm also a public relations guy, and again, this is not a fault, right? But she has tics and she is fidgety and she has a certain speech pattern. And to a lot of people, um, that's noise that gets in the way of the message. It distracts them. They can't focus what she's saying, or diminishes um, the amount of trust, or the amount of um, acknowledgement of someone's expertise that someone at the other end is willing to give it. Um, I personally don't think it's fair. Um, but if you're sitting in the back and doing, with the visor and the calculator and bean counting and doing the cold hard calculations, if you're being honest, it's a thing. It's a thing. It's shallow, it's superficial. It shouldn't matter, but it does. It does. When you're at home and people are giving you information, um, the goal is to make it as easy to take in as possible, which means, you know, great studios, good lighting, dressed well, hair, makeup, people that are attractive and pleasant to watch who are delivering the news. Um, you know, a pace of speech that is a little slower than mine, to be sure that we take time and that we do not stammer or stutter, or don't need to take a time to say, as we're looking for our next thought. All these things that they do to make sure that the message comes in completely smoothly to you, and you have to do as little work as possible in order to be able to understand the message. So, in her delivery, um, there is a lot that can get in the way. Um, and again, it's unfair that you just can't see past that and filter that out, and just focus on the content, and how well it's put together. But like I said, when you're formulating a message, um, it's actually a very tiny percent of it that's actually the words, tone, inflection, eye contact, body language, um, the choice, not the words themselves, but the words that you choose, where you put them, how you arrange them, um, the degree of superlative you throw in your word choice. All these types of things uh, also convey a message and add to your message. So when there's something going on with several of these points, unfortunately, it's, you know, think of it as listening to a phone call, it's like going through a tunnel, right? And the volume suddenly goes down and you can still hear someone, but you're like, what? Right? It's just all these little things that create extra effort, do get in the way. So the comment about her not being a necessarily effective communicator, and that people may have talked about that, quite possible. But then again, you've got one of the best minds out there. I mean, we're talking about past editor at the Financial Times. I mean, Oxford educated. I mean, you know, and she's good. So there are times, Stephen Gilbo is another person like that, where, you keep an ineffective communicator because they have the credibility. Stephen Gilbo really has, I mean, in English Canada, and particularly out west, whatever comes out of his mouth, it gets to his lips and then it falls flat. It just doesn't sell. But Quebec, which is one of the greener of our provinces, they love this guy. They love this guy. Right. And when he's speaking in French, it's completely different. The passion, the emotion, right. He really comes across way better in French. So, and on our show, we've suggested it years ago, like in year-end reviews, that just like, please replace this guy, because he's not helping you in English Canada. But there would be a cost in Quebec to the Liberals to remove him, you know, because he's got the cred. He's earned the cred over the course of his career. So, he's seen as very, very credible. And he does know his stuff. But knowing your stuff and having the ability to communicate it in a manner that is persuasive are two entirely different skills, sadly. Um, so, yeah, fall economic statement, the supply measures have passed. Bank of Canada data, interest rate decision coming in today. So a lot of things related to money. And then, of course, oh, did they make the announcement? I'm just checking here. Oh, the announcement's at 9:45 this morning. Okay, so we probably won't have it during the show here. But I did get the update on it. So cool. Yeah, with regards to money, all things money and economics, even the value of the dollar and everything, there is a lot going on at this particular time. Mostly driven, of course, by the fact that the supply estimates needed to be passed, and the fact that we're December 11th. We're 10 days away from the start of winter. We still haven't had a fall economic statement. It's it is getting a little late. So, all these stories coming to a head at the same time, but and there will be some fallout yet, because we know that Pierre Poilievre is looking to pounce on absolutely anything. I still can't find anything that confirms actually that those estimates have been passed. I read something earlier, but I see no headline, so I actually might be wrong on that. Kids and Cubs, and may have thought I saw it. Oh, wait a minute. Yes. No, they did. Meanwhile, MPs on Tuesday voted to approve an additional $21.6 billion in government spending. Okay, so it is approved. All right. Maybe just has to go through Senate, so not announced yet. So, okay. I knew I had seen it, and I wasn't mistaken. So, yes, the money this year on those estimates, just to mention here what it will go to, because when I was telling you, it's going for some very specific things that actually do matter. So this is from the CTV. Here's Nick Murray, really the Canadian press, but as published in CTV. Nick Murray. Parliament has approved $21.6 billion in government spending in a late Tuesday vote in the House of Commons. On the final day the money could be voted on, MPs rushed through the supplementary funding to the 2024 budget, including money for various programs such as First Nations Child Services, dental care, and compensation to Quebec for services to asylum seekers. So, again, not money for frivolous things. These things really important. So, it had to be approved because there was a lot of people waiting on this money. It not being approved would have delayed and then would have caused some huge hiccups in all of these programs. The Conservative Party opposed the additional spending in its entirety, of course, because they don't care if you suffer. While the Bloc Québécois only opposed one aspect of it, a $1.1 million in spending for Canada's special representative on combating Islamophobia. Of course. Just, I'm tired of scapegoats. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh told reporters last week his party would vote the supplementary estimates through given the $317 million additional money for the government's new dental care program. Quote, I'm pleased the majority of members in the House of Commons recognize that the supports contained in the supplementary estimates are supports that Canadians need, Treasury Board President Anita Anand told the Canadian press following the vote. There had been uncertainty around whether the vote would even happen before Tuesday's deadline. Parliament has been paralyzed for months as the Conservative pressed the Liberals to hand over documents relating to hundreds of millions of dollars of spending on a green tech fund. The NDP and Bloc Québécois have been unwilling to free the Liberals from the stalemate, as they too want the government to release the unredacted documents. Okay, for the first time in the reporting, I've seen some accountability and some blame attributed to the NDP and the Bloc Québécois. What I still have yet to see in these articles is an additional statement stating that the documents that the Conservatives are demanding be handed over are documents the RCMP could not use, even if they were, because it would be unconstitutional. That seems to be some critical information to be giving people up front. Quote, the issue is the focus on an ongoing privilege debate, which the Conservatives have pledged to keep going until they get what they want. Privilege. I'm going to keep going my tantrum until I get what I want. Yeah, that tracks. Privilege matters take precedence over nearly all other House affairs, so government business has been almost entirely stalled. When the government first tabled the supplementary estimates, Anand warned some departments might be in financial trouble if the spending wasn't approved. But in a ruling last week citing House of Commons rules and procedures, Speaker Greg Fergus said he would exercise his authority to pause the privilege debate so the vote on government spending could proceed. In other words, this is something that you absolutely and necessarily must do. And since you are not doing it, I am going to make you do it. Was what the speaker did there. Man, asked if perhaps there was a misunderstanding on whether the spending would ultimately get passed considering the ongoing privilege debate, Anand said it may not have been universally understood. Quote, we have a different process than the United States, Anand said, referencing U.S. government shutdowns when spending bills don't get approved. I recognize that, but I'm not sure that was universally understood. Among other requests of the supplementary estimates is the $561 million for the Department of National Defense for its Canada multi-mission aircraft project. So Pierre is going, you got to spend the 2% on NATO. Okay, vote for $561 million more for a multi-mission aircraft project. No. Oh, so I see you're going to be helpful. Quote, this funding is needed now for quarterly payment under the delivery plan we have with the United States government for the acquisition of up to 16 P-8S Poseidon aircraft, a Defense Department spokesperson said in a statement. The P-8A Poseidons are to replace Canada's current maritime patrol aircraft, the CP-140 Aurora, which have been in service for more than 40 years. And I wish that Kit Hugh was here with us because he could probably wax very enthusiastic on these two planes. Quote, we are expecting first delivery of the aircraft in 2026, a department spokesperson said. The First Nations Child and Family Services Program request is for $955.2 million, almost $1 billion, which Indigenous Services Canada says is, quote, to ensure continued compliance with Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders and allow the continued delivery of supports. So an extra $1 billion to be in compliance with a order from a Canadian Human Rights Tribunal court. And PP voted no on that too, because, well, you know, it's just for the Indigenous, and, well, who cares about them? We know that he doesn't, right? Because on the day that Harper issued that federal apology, he went off to CFRA and complained that we weren't getting value for money for tort settlements, and that the Indigenous just needed to find a work ethic, and it was up to him, white man, to instill it in them. And then on the day that the Pope came to Canada to deliver the apology for the residential schools, well, that's the day that PP announced that he was running for Prime Minister. The 2 days in Canadian history where there were major apologies for residential schools, and this man engaged in counter-programming to pull focus from it. Is it any wonder that he voted against nearly $1 billion to help kids, as ordered by a court? Oh, but it's a human rights court. So, and, well, we know what he thinks about those because, you know, he's graciously offered without being asked to suspend our rights using the notwithstanding clause. Not just any rights. Not just any rights. Like some big ones. Some really huge ones. Your right to ensure that a person charged with an offense is not denied their liberty until their day in court, for example, is one that he is mused aloud about suspending. The right of people to not face cruel and unusual punishment is another one, without being asked, unprompted, in a room in front of police chiefs. My laws will be unconstitutional, and if they are not, I will make them constitutional. I believe was not a direct quote, but about the way he framed it. So yeah, not particularly impressive. The money for the Quebec asylum seekers is $581.3 million request through the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. Well, he doesn't want any asylum seekers, so no wonder he didn't vote for that. All three departments said none of those requests is for money which has already been spent. If the funds weren't approved, the Immigration Department said it might look to dip into government contingency funds to repay the province, while the Defense Department said it could encounter problems meeting contractual obligations as well as keeping the projects on track. So if we had difficulty meeting contractual obligations and keeping the project on track, those aircraft that we need, those Poseidon 16 P8 Poseidon aircraft that we're going to use to replace Canada's current maritime patrol aircraft, those would be delayed potentially, or maybe taking the risk of the contract being nullified and everything we've invested into that point just going up in smoke. But Pierre voted for that. He couldn't find one thing in that bill that he could support. Not one. Interesting. Very telling. Very revealing. All right, kits and cubs. If you have noticed that I'm not interacting with you from the chat today, kits and cubs, that's a little bit deliberate. Unfortunately, it seems that the chat running is that which was freezing up the computer, sadly enough. So I was not able. I'm not able to see anything now. I just found a way to bring it up here on the phone studio, but I only see one chat at a time. But I do thank you, kits and cubs, because I know, as always, kits and cubs, that you have extremely fantastic chat and have lots of intelligent things to say and contribute. So yes, I look forward to hopefully being able to catch one or two things here in the chat from you guys when I see it on the screen here. And it seems that Kid Carol is leaving, so bye-bye. That's all I see. All I see is bye Carol on my screen. It seems that the Prime Minister is going to have yet another virtual meeting with the premiers to discuss things with regard to tariffs and all that kind of stuff. And there was a quote with it that struck me as a little interesting. And it's Danielle Smith again. And now she seems to have changed her tune. She says, if we act like we're victims, then I guess he's going to treat us like we're victims. I'm still old enough to remember her rushing to a camera about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Like this, looking like this, up in the camera. I was like, the United States is so big, they could do whatever they want with us. We should really, everything that Donald Trump says about our border and is absolutely true, and about our immigration system is absolutely true. Because I fully swallow and accept the frame that he's put on this in his narrative, and we need to act because, well, United States could make a meal out of us. That's what she was saying a couple of weeks ago. And now it's like, if we act like we're victims, then I guess he's going to treat us like we were victims. Then why were you out there acting like a victim? I don't understand her. I don't understand. This is the right take now. So why was our first choice to just like she ran and dived on a slip and slide, and while she was on it, turned on her back and showed her belly as she was like just sliding by. It's like, notice me, notice me. And now it's like, we can't be victims. Listen, if that's her stance, I'm happy that she's there now. But I'm having a lot of trouble buying it from her. Because the opening move was total and complete capitulation. Give them whatever they want. Just make sure they don't touch my whale. I'm just, yeah, come on. These disingenuous slimes need to pick a flipping lane. They are freaking political weather vanes. I'm just, my God. Yeah, I see that too. The response to Trump's latest invade Canada stuff. I was like, calling Trudeau the governor. It's like, again, it's rude, right? It's rude. It's absolutely insulting. It's all those things, right? Normal people don't do this shit. And he's not a normal person. So again, a lot of people you got to take him seriously. He probably has designs somehow. But it's like, our prime minister has been called far worse things by substantially better people. Again, he stirs pots. Let's not run after every shiny damn thing. Right? Now, at this virtual meeting, the Prime Minister will be expecting an update from the premiers on their outreach efforts, and the Prime Minister is to update them as to his own progress. And as we mentioned, the federal government right now looks like it's going to spend about an extra $1 billion at the border. That will be in the next budget, I would assume. Helicopters, extra staff, all that kind of stuff. Now, when I mentioned earlier, Pierre voluntarily wanting to open up preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, there's another event that happened yesterday, and I'm hoping to reach out to this organization to find someone to come on our show. But yesterday, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association launched a new initiative called the Save Our Charter program. And they had someone come in on the Hill and have a press availability, and it's available on CPAC if you want to check it out, and it would be pretty important. According to the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, what is so dangerous about the notwithstanding clause? The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects key rights and freedoms of everyone in Canada. These rights are essential to preserving Canada as a democratic society where we can live our lives freely. Shockingly, if some of our most important charter rights were playing cards, the notwithstanding clause would be the joker that beats them all. Section 33 of the Charter, commonly known as the notwithstanding clause, gives lawmakers the ability to shrug off important fundamental rights and freedoms protected under the Charter. When invoked, this clause prevents courts from striking down serious charter violations contained in laws. It is thus nothing short of a charter override. The rights subject to the charter override are far from trivial. Sections 2 and 7 through 15 of the Charter include many of the most basic essential principles needed for a free and democratic society. Some of these rights are ever present in daily life. They allow people in Canada to freely speak up about issues they care about, regardless of their opinions, aspirations, and political beliefs, to peacefully protest for their vision of a better world, to exercise their religion freely, and to collectively bargain for better working conditions. Other rights covered by the Charter override are there to protect people at their most vulnerable. Their rights ensure that every individual is treated equally under the law. They protect the life, liberty, and security of all people, regardless of their backgrounds or circumstances. They ensure that people in Canada are not arbitrarily detained and that they are presumed innocent until proven guilty of an offense. Since these rights and freedoms are so fundamental to all of us, one might ask why the Charter override even exists. The answer to this question is that it was a political compromise. In 1981, in the early stages of our charter's development, the federal government, Ontario, and New Brunswick supported the entrenchment of a national charter of rights, while the remaining provinces opposed entrenchment in favor of giving lawmakers the last word. Section 33 was seen as a way of solving that deadlock. Several elected officials directly involved in the 1981 negotiations have since confirmed that the charter override was never meant to circumvent normal court processes or to be used regularly by any government to override the rule of law. Quote, a former Ontario premier, uh, I'm not sure why they didn't put his name, the former Ontario premier from 1971 to 1985, which I would have to go look up, saying the sole purpose of the notwithstanding clause was only for those exceptionally rare circumstances when a province wanted to bring in a specific benefit or program provision for a part of their population, people of a certain age, for example, that might have seemed discriminatory under the charter. And Ontario's Attorney Generals in 1981 said the clause was designed to be invoked by legislatures in exceptional situations and only as a last resort, after careful consideration. It was not designed to be used by governments as a convenience or as a means to circumvent a proper process. The charter override was intended to be a last resort, not a preemptive strike against charter rights. Alarmingly, recent history shows that some provincial governments have not hesitated to stray from this initial objective. We should all be wary of normalizing the use of this dangerous clause to override important rights and freedoms. How is the charter override being used? For nearly 40 years, most governments refrained from using the charter override. This is no longer the case. In recent years, several provincial governments have used or attempted to use the clause to, quote, prevent education workers from striking, ban provincial government employees from wearing religious symbols, prevent transgender youth from using their chosen names and pronouns in school, and, quote, limit third-party political spending in the year ahead of an election. If governments can use the charter override without consequence, they won't hesitate to do so time and time again. If our rights and freedoms can easily be overridden, our charter is meaningless. This should concern everyone. Governments could one day decide to use the charter override to ban speech critical of people in power or to imprison people without giving them a fair trial. And thank you, Mr. Jim, the the Premier of Ontario from 1971 to 1985 was Bill Davis. I should have known that. But I only started getting interested in politics in 1984, so I kind of missed his whole tenure. Here is an overview of some recent uses of the charter override and why they are problematic. In 2021, the Government of Ontario imposed limitations on third-party political expression for a full year prior to an election. This limit on criticism of the government was struck down by the Ontario Superior Court as an unjustifiable infringement on freedom of expression. The Government of Ontario used the charter override to maintain the restriction rather than changing the law to respect charter rights. So, for example, if you're a union in Ontario or a third-party advertiser, while the provincial government in the whole lead up to an election prior to the writ being drawn can spend tons of money on advertising campaigns, promoting itself, promoting its policies, bashing its opponents. You, concerned citizens and concerned citizens who have organized as a group, cannot. For a full year. It used to be a shorter period, 3 months or 6 months or something like that. But the Ontario Progressive Conservatives extended that to a year and then invoked the notwithstanding clause. So their tender sensibilities and their feelings wouldn't be hurt. And the whole year as they're preparing for an election. Also, In Ontario, the province used the charter override again in 2022 to prohibit education workers from striking, even though courts have determined that freedom of association includes the right to strike and the right to collective bargaining. Many individuals, unions, and organizations, including the CCLA, raised the alarm, and following a wave of popular discontent, the Ontario government repealed this controversial bill. And they also introduced this bill despite the fact that the Liberals, previous to them, tried the same damn thing. Were told that they couldn't do it, and then were charged a very onerous financial penalty. Well, not the Liberal Party, but the government of Ontario, which we had to pay. So it was unconstitutional, and it resulted in additional costs, and they knew all of this before they did it, and they did it anyway. And they said, but Kathleen Wynne wasn't smart enough to put the notwithstanding clause to it, so we'll do that. In Quebec, in June of 2019, Quebec used the charter override in Bill 21 to ban public sector workers such as teachers, lawyers, and police officers from wearing religious symbols. This grievous infringement on freedom of religion and expression applies to symbols which may appear on jewelry, such as the crucifix and the Star of David, as well as to garments essential to religious observance, such as hijabs, turbans, and yarmulkes. CCLA, along with the National Council of Canadian Muslims, challenged the constitutionality of Bill 21 within 24 hours of the bill becoming law. And in this case, again, the other egregious part is that while having less access to public sector jobs, where you are in a position of authority, you still get the privilege of paying the same damn taxes. Charming. In Saskatchewan, in 2023, Saskatchewan used the charter override to ban transgender students from using their chosen names and pronouns in schools without formal parental permission. This imposes irreparable harm on the most vulnerable students, young people who may not be in a position to get support from their families. If schools are required to reveal this aspect of students' identity to parents, what's next? And again, as we keep on saying, on this file particularly, the government is trying to say that very, very personal information about a human being, a Canadian citizen, even though they are young, is something that does not belong to the citizen, but belongs to the state. And it is up to the state to decide what it will and won't do with, again, the most personal information. And again, for those who don't understand it, can't wrap their heads around it because it's a trans thing, think of pregnancy or divorce. You are pregnant or you intend to get a divorce, but you have not yet announced it to your partner. But you go to the hospital to go get a checkup. And now there's a medical record that you are pregnant, or you go to a lawyer to ask for some advice about divorce proceedings. So there is someone in a position of authority, a medical professional or a lawyer, that has information that you are pregnant or that you intend to get a divorce. And then they turn around and they say, wow, but you're asking me to hide this from your partner, your spouse. It is my obligation to take this very personal and sensitive information that belongs to you only and inform your spouse that you are pregnant, or inform your spouse that you intend to divorce them. Now, let's say you're in an abusive relationship. How does the application of the law in that case work out for you if you're trying to plan your escape? This information does not belong to the state. It does not belong to the state to hide it or to share it. It's not theirs. So the state is saying the most personal information about you, no matter how vulnerable you are, is information that we are entitled to share with other people without your consent, regardless of the damage it could do to you. And we believe in this so profoundly that we are going to overwrite your charter rights to privacy in order to do it. This is not okay. And that's why the CCLA has launched this campaign. According to Newmarket Today, Catherine DeClercq, charter advocates are launching a national campaign on the notwithstanding clause in the hopes of drumming up public support for what they call a deeply concerning misuse of the tool governments can use to override Canadians' otherwise enshrined rights. In recent years, some provincial governments have increasingly used this clause to override basic rights and freedoms and to try to prevent courts from striking down horrendous rights violations as unconstitutional. Anaïs Bussière-McNichol, the director of the Fundamental Freedoms Program with the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, told reporters in Ottawa. This is deeply alarming. The campaign entitled Save Our Charter calls for three things, the first of which is for governments to simply not use the notwithstanding clause preemptively. Quote, this means that lawmakers should not use the notwithstanding clause until after receiving a final decision from a court on the constitutionality of a law, Bussière-McNichol said. An example of this was Ontario Premier Doug Ford's government use of Section 33 clause in 2022 to prevent educational workers from striking amid contract negotiations. The Ford government repealed the Section 33 equipped legislation after quick and significant public outrage and protest. The CCLA also wants to see a legislature supermajority required for the charter override to be used. Finally, it wants the courts to have the ability to strike down laws that invoke the notwithstanding clause in some cases. Quote, this would be the case when a law directly attacks the core fundamental rights, freedom, or legal protection that existed well before the Charter was enacted, Bussière-McNichol added. No democratic society can thrive without robust protection of these rights. And I'm so glad they said that because this is something we've been saying on the show too. Maybe we need to take one of these things to the Supreme Court and see if the Supreme Court, for the notwithstanding clause, applies the same thought as every other clause in the Constitution, that there are reasonable limits. Because it would be really nice to actually have those reasonable limits to the application of the notwithstanding clause spelled out clearly. Because we need to stop this stuff that our leaders are trying to do to us here with this. The campaign will include a petition and website spreading awareness of the dangers of misuses of the notwithstanding clause, comes amid new legislation expected to be tabled Thursday in Ontario cracking down on homeless encampments. Ford, who encouraged mayors to publicly call on him to use the notwithstanding clause to clear encampments without ensuring residents had somewhere to go, recently backtracked on the preemptive use of the legal measure. Instead, he said he is, quote, confident the measures in the bill will be, quote, common sense, practical, and entirely aligned with the Charter and rights of freedoms. However, the Premier also noted, quote, should the courts interfere with our shared goal of effectively addressing and clearing out encampments under these enhanced tools, with your support, our government is fully prepared to use the notwithstanding clause. Let's correct that because that line is bullshit. The courts are not going to interfere with your shared goal of effectively addressing and clearing out encampments using these enhanced tools. What the courts will do is guarantee that your shared goal of effectively addressing and clearing out encampments using these enhanced tools are done in accordance with the Constitution. The court is not there to obstruct you in your goal. The court is there to guide you in ensuring that whatever goal you have, you are doing it in compliance with the law. So if you have a problem with that, what you're basically saying is that you have a problem with the court enforcing law as it is, as you are trying to create criminals. Rules for thee, but not for me. The CCLA said that while this would not be interpreted legally as a preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, they, quote, have a very big problem with this kind of statement. Quote, courts have already recognized that unhoused people have a right to shelter, and if there is no safe shelter accessible and housing accessible, well, they have the right to be in encampments. And I'm going to guess that the court is going to see this similar to how they see treatment for people suffering from addictions. It's like you cannot sentence an addict to death because they are an addict. You need to provide them with services that will keep them alive. That's how the safe injection sites got approved. If you don't have anything for them and this increases their chances of not dying, then you got to do it unless you come up with something better. You can't take someone that's unhoused. I would guess that if we're taking that concept that you can't cruelly or unusually punish someone or even sentence them to death for something that they can't control. You're unhoused. What are you going to do? Go somewhere and build it? No, you can't. That's what they're trying to do with the tents. But no, you can't be on this land. This is not your land. You can't be here. You're trespassing. Okay. So I don't have a home. I found a way to creatively get myself one, even though it's far from the best thing. But you're saying, no, you can't live here. You got to be able to live somewhere. If there is no shelter, then you cannot remove from a human being whatever shelter they manage to find for themselves or fabricate for themselves. Otherwise, you sentence them to death. These things are not hard. You have to go out of your way. Actually, you have to put more effort in not wanting to acknowledge these realities. It's exhausting. Constitutional lawyer and University of Ottawa professor Martha Jackman previously told the Trillium that it appears as though the Premier is still threatening to use the clause. Quote, the Premier seems to be holding Section 33 as a bit of sort of Damocles, handing over any reaction to the legislation in courts. So basically, City Council, everybody, I'm not going to use the notwithstanding clause, but hey, city councilors, if you're having trouble and you can't do the work or you don't want to do the work, just say, Uncle Doug, please, please, please invoke the notwithstanding clause. Help us. And I'm going to go, well, I didn't really want to, but oh, well, I guess I have to. So much theater. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association said it's not just Ford who has been cavalier with the notwithstanding clause. Quebec Premier François Legault has suggested using it to ban praying in public lately. Yes. Quebec Premier François Legault is talking about banning public prayer because it is not secular. You can do whatever you want to in your own home. That's okay, he says. Like that makes it okay. And yeah. And we know what's going on there, right? His party is second in the polls, but it's not translating in the seats. So he looks like his party's going to be completely decimated. And well, what works well for François Legault? The ethnocultural thing. He built his entire political career on that. So he's going back to the well one more time because banning people from accessing government jobs wasn't enough. And then banning people from accessing medical services in a language other than French if you didn't learn French fast enough. And I think they gave him like 6 months or something, wasn't enough. And then doing absolutely insane things to universities that make it such that the 3 English language universities in the province specifically all got hobbled, but they made an exception for bishops because it was smaller. But McGill and Concordia have seen enrollment drop like 30% or something as a result of these new rules, which are about one thing they say, but they really end up being about making sure that not very many additional Anglophones come to the province to study. There, the ethnocultural thing is big for him. So he's going to the well one more time now, banning public prayer. Not sure how that will work out given how unpopular he is at the moment. But yeah, that's what he's going for. And again, threatening to invoke the notwithstanding clause. I'm going to ban public prayer. And if you dare say that you dare say that this is about brown people, really, and get a little uppity about it, smack, notwithstanding clause. I've done it before and I'll do it again. Boy. While in Saskatchewan, the provincial government used the notwithstanding clause to protect itself from legal challenges related to a law requiring consent for students under the age of 16 to change their names or pronouns while in school. I mean, this is a very, very dangerous trend, Bussière McNichol said. Our position is definitely that governments should be enacting laws that comply with the Charter, and they should be prepared to defend the constitutionality of their laws in front of courts. So yeah, Kids and Cubs, we will be reaching out because this is a conversation I would really like to have, and I suspect, given the composition of the Dan fam, I know that a lot of you are interested in rights. Right? We had Kit Angela doing her thing in Hamilton. We have Kit Dan, who's so involved in many things, and I know that there's a lot of you through the discussion who care a lot about the subject matter. So I will reach out and hopefully we can get someone from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association to come on our show and talk a little bit more in depth about this and why it matters, and maybe give us some tips as to what we can do to put some pressure on our federal governments to not go that route. Okay, Kits and Cubs, let's see what else I have for you today. Yes, this is very important. Yesterday, there was a lot of stuff going on in terms of where people were where they were going and showing support. There's a group in Canada called the Equal Voices Campaign, and Equal Voice is sorry. Little thing here. Equal Voice Foundation is a registered charity that's dedicated to improving gender representation in Canadian politics. They work to advance education and provide leadership training for women and gender diverse people to increase their participation at all levels of Canadian politics. By leading and supporting initiatives, they will equip women and gender diverse people with the skills and tools they need to successfully run for office. So that they were hosting an event yesterday, and a lot of people attended that. The Prime Minister was there. It was yesterday evening, and they had a gala. And New Democrat leader Jagmeet Singh was there, and so was the Green Party's Elizabeth May there. You will notice that the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada could not be bothered to show up at a gala in support of more women and gender diverse people participating in politics and running for office. Again, sometimes where you don't show up and what you don't say speaks volumes. Also, yesterday, the federal ombudsman for victims of crime, Benjamin Roebuck, joined the Canadian Race Relations Foundation Executive Director Mohammed Hashim, Special Representative on Combating Islamophobia, Amira El Gawabi, and the Special Envoy on Preserving Holocaust Remembrance and on Combating Anti-Semitism, Deborah Lyons, for mid-morning briefing session on a newly released study titled Examining the Challenges and Gaps in Hate Crime Responses across Canada. And later yesterday morning, Canadians United Against Hate founder Fareed Khan and other right activists, including Independent Jewish Voices member Rabbi David Miviser, University of Ottawa professor Nadia Abuzada, and Ottawa lawyer Yavar Hamid, were in the West Block Press Theatre to mark International Human Rights Day, as well as the International Day to commemorate victims of genocide by calling out both Canada's complicity in Gaza genocide and the decline of rights protections in Canada. So we had yesterday at 10:30 in the morning an event focusing on Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism, while at the same time, like this, at which there was it was multi-faith, right? So we had the special representative on combating Islamophobia and the special envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance there, like this, and this was to examine the challenges and gaps in hate crime responses, and then at the same time, about half an hour, well, at the same time, half an hour later, this an issue, a group bringing issues with regard to the genocide, what they are labeling as a genocide in Gaza. So, to me, when I was reading these things, um, it's what a beautiful mess this country is, in a way. Um, but you see, like when I'm talking about holding on to hope, like this, that there is a group called the Equal Voice Foundation that's trying to make sure that there's a fuller participation from women and gender diverse people in politics when we're living in a nation that has both a special representative on combating Islamophobia and a special envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism in the same country. And they can work side by side and together on things. That gives me hope. And that there are people that can look, that have come to Canada or have been born here and have parents that were born elsewhere, but have an affection and ties in some way to another land that relates directly to their culture. And they see things going on there that tears their heart apart. That in this country, they can come up to a mic and get the attention of the nation for a few minutes and draw our attention to it. These are beautiful things. And that people are engaged enough in their communities, in their lives, to take advantage of these opportunities, to run for these positions, to want to be the face of these causes with everything that entails in today's social media 24/7 world. There are a lot. I know that things have been heavy and negative, but there are a lot of good people doing a lot of good things, and there are a lot of passionate people advocating about the entire range of issues, all with the intent to make the world, to make this country just a little bit better every day. And while the Pierre Poilievres get all the attention and all the focus because they're loud and they flap their wings and they move a lot of wind, never forget, quietly in the background, there's a lot of this stuff going on. The hard work of democracy is being done every day in little ways, often not with cameras, often not with a lot of press coverage, but it is happening. People believe in this stuff. So don't give up on your fellow citizens. Don't give up on your fellow citizens. All right? In a bit of unhappy news, because we all got a kick out of this, but it seems that the push for the Onion to purchase Alexis Jones InfoWars has been stopped for now, according to CBC, according to Thomson Reuters, as published in CBC. A U.S. bankruptcy judge on Tuesday stopped the parody news site The Onion from buying conspiracy theorist Alex Jones InfoWars website, ruling that a bankruptcy option did not result in the best possible bids. U.S. bankruptcy judge Christopher Lopez rejected Jones's claims that the auction was plagued by, quote, collusion at the end of a 2-day hearing in Houston. But he said the court-appointed bankruptcy trustee who ran the auction made, quote, a good faith error by quickly asking for final offers for InfoWars instead of encouraging more back and forth bidding between the Onion and a company affiliated with Jones' supplement selling business, which was the runner-up. Quote, this should have been opened back up, and it should have been opened back up for everybody, Lopez said. It's clear that the trustee left the potential for a lot of money on the table. Lopez said neither of the two offers for InfoWars were enough money given the scope of Jones's debts, and told the trustee to work to resolve some of the disputes between the creditors before making a new attempt to sell InfoWars. The Onion was named the winning bidder for InfoWars in a November auction, but Jones and First American United Companies, the Jones affiliated company, had argued the sale process was tainted because the Onion received too much credit for having the support of families that won large court verdicts against Jones. Jones declared bankruptcy in 2022 and was forced to liquidate his assets to pay over $1.3 billion US in legal judgments to the families of 20 students and 6 staff members who were fatally shot in the 2012 massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. Courts in Connecticut and Texas have ruled Jones defamed the families by making repeated false claims the mass shooting was staged as part of a government plot to take guns away from Americans. Jones's attorney, Ben Brooks, told Lopez at a hearing on Monday that the Onion only put up half as much cash as the $3.5 million offer from First American United Companies, but boosted its bid with, quote, smoke and mirrors calculations. The Connecticut-based Sandy Hook families, who are Jones's largest creditors, augmented the Onion's bid by agreeing to forego some repayment from the InfoWars sale so that the other creditors could receive more money. That concession caused a bankruptcy trustee to value the Onion's bid at $7 million overall. Chris Mattei, an attorney for the Connecticut-based Sandy Hook families, said the ruling was disappointing, but did not change the fact that Jones owes his clients huge sums of money. The families, who have already persevered through countless delays and roadblocks, remain resilient and determined as ever to hold Alex Jones and his corrupt business accountable for the harms he has caused, Mattei said. Jones celebrated the verdict on InfoWars. The Onion's CEO, Ben Collins, said that the company was deeply disappointed in Lopez's decision, but remains interested in purchasing InfoWars and making it better, funnier internet. The Onion had planned to relaunch InfoWars in 2025 as a parody site filled with, quote, noticeably less hateful disinformation than before. Christopher Murray, a court appointee trustee charged with selling Jones's assets, testified Tuesday that the auction was fair and First American United Companies only complained about the process after learning its bid was not chosen. And that's what I'm wondering here, if the second attempt will allow that group to rally a whole bunch of other investors to join them to make sure it stays in their hands instead, because there's only so much of the settlement that the Sandy Hook families will be willing to contribute to this effort. So, yeah, kind of sad because I was really looking forward to that, to be totally honest, to see what it is that they would put out. But yeah, so far it does not look like it is going to happen for now, Kits and Cubs. And again, maybe in the future. But yeah, we don't, not yet at least. It'll be a little denied. All right, Kits and Cubs, you know what? I think we have a show today because I think overall I did okay considering all the technical stuff that took place. So, you know what? I will leave on a high if I can. I think that might be the smart thing to do. Oh, yes, I do have one thing, but I will save it for the Easter egg. Okay. And it also has in the theme of our show with money. But for now, Kids and Cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you loved listening to us because we loved making this for you. Now remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. And you, Kids and Cubs, have the mouths from which we want the words to come. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it. When you do, it means the world to us. Now, if you would like to help us, for example, by not missing an episode, you don't have to because of the Ray Girl, She sponsored our pod page. So if you are watching us right now, if you scan that QR code and, you've watched us, maybe you're new and it's like, wow, I really like this show. Now, if you're new today, you're only getting half the amazing power because we don't have Mr. Grizzly here. So, you get two charming and delightful personalities for the price of one. So, but if you scan that, that will bring you to our pod page site where you can subscribe. And when we have something fresh off the bandwidth in podcast format, it will come directly to you. And that way, you will never have to miss an episode because you'll never have to come looking for us. We will come to you. Now, if you would like to help us in other ways, kits and cubs, you can do so by making like Kit Elaine and surfing yourself on down to the True North Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube channel. And that QR code that just appeared by my head right there will take you there if you scan it. And if you go there, we have 3 buttons for you. One's called like, one's called share, and the other one's called subscribe. And they really want you to touch them. They want you to click them. They do. You hear them calling. So if you click our buttons, that makes us very happy, and it helps us with all the algorithms and all that good stuff. So thank you for your continued support there. If you would like to help us in yet another way, kits and cubs, well, one way to do that is to help us bring this show to you 5 days a week, plus a couple of little specials by I don't know, offering us maybe a little financial support and encouragement to help us underwrite the costs of the show. Internet connections, subscription fees, new equipment, that stuff, better upgrades, all those things, kits and cubs. It costs a little bit of money. So if you would like to help us with that, we would be very grateful for your assistance. And you can do that by scanning that QR code that has just appeared, which brings us to our coffee page. And it's coffee page because, we suggest that if you like what we do, that you buy us a coffee, or in my case, a cup of hot chocolate, because, I need to maintain my levels. So our coffee page, you scan that QR code, or if you're listening at home, coffee, it's spelled ko-fi, a little clever, .com/eagerbeaver. That's ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. And if you go there, you will find our emergency hydration fund, and you can help us keep our staff happy. Because, coffee and hot chocolate help us write the show. And for some reason, I don't know how it happens, but they keep disappearing on us. No idea how that happens. So if you would like to help us with our staff retention program, we would really appreciate your support. Now, if you're not able to contribute financially, worry no more. Not 1 second more. That's an order. Because the gifts of your participation and your presence are the ones that do mean the most to us, kits and cubs. And we're so glad that you're here. And we want to hear from you. We want to know what's on your mind. So please write to us, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. And kits and cubs, I would like to ask you, because I know we have a democracy, something that you do portion, but this will be an audience participation. As the Christmas holidays are coming, we'd like to do some shows between Christmas and New Year's where we do a little bit of a review at the end of the year. So if you have any suggestions at all, for example, who was the most impressive international politician, national, provincial, or municipal? So always the 4 levels, right? International, national, provincial, or municipal. Politician. What was the biggest story for you? Federal, again, internationally, federally, provincially, municipally. What was the biggest story? Who's the most overrated? Who's the most underrated? If you have thoughts on those, please do send them through us through preferably through the Gmail, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, and just put in the header year end, But share us your thoughts because what we would like to do is get your ideas, have a little pool of nominations, and maybe try some Twitter polls as to what your views on that as the Dam Fam would be. So there you go, kids and cubs. Please help us with that little audience participation. Help us build our shows in between. So your suggestions for the big stories of the year or the politicians that impressed you or disappointed you. So for the stories and the politicians, impressed or disappointed, most important, least important, or most overplayed. You choose the categories. Let us know what you think about the year. But we want your thoughts so that we can do our year in review specials. Because last year we did them on our own, just our own input. But we thought if we started early enough this year, we can get some input from you like this because this is your show too. Okay. So thank you so very much for everything you do and for helping us out with that. So truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is the address to which you send that or anything else you want to share with us. Story ideas, something good that happened to you. You have had some success. If you have questions for us about politics or questions about how it is we put the show together, all of that, it's all welcome. We want to hear from you. So please don't be shy. And of course, please share your compliments and your constructive criticism and things that you think that we can improve, right? We appreciate all of it. It all helps us get better because we do want to make the show better over time for you. Because democracy is something that you do. Oh, I forgot all the other ways to mention how you can join us. So truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address, but you can also reach us on Twitter and Blue Sky @TrueEager, our Facebook page, True North Eager Beaver. And if you're listening on our YouTube page, we have the comment section down below. We try to read everything, not necessarily able to get back to everyone, but we do appreciate everything you do to contribute because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs. If you happen to be living in Langley, Cloverdale City in British Columbia, you have a federal by-election coming up in just 4 days. So make sure that you plan your vote. I'm not sure if there's still any early voting available at this point for the by-election, but remember, kids don't allow kids to do democracy alone. So talk about the election and try to get other people interested in going to vote as well. It's very important. Now, if you happen to be living, kits and cubs, in sorry, I was going to say Westbridge, in Lethbridge West in Alberta. You have a provincial by-election coming in on the 18th, so just 2 days later. Please take the time to research your candidates and find out what you need to know about them so that you can make the most informed choice possible. Now, as well, because the holiday season is coming up and so is winter, and I mentioned Kit Angela earlier today, Kits and Cubs, we're getting a taste of wintry weather, which means that our fellow citizens, our brothers and sisters who are unhoused, are going to need access to warming centers and other type services. And last year, a certain number of our municipal um, politicians were not particularly inclined to want to help out with that. So it might be a good moment to start making phone calls and writing letters, writing emails, demanding meetings to talk about how it is that you would really like this year to not have to open a newspaper or turn on the TV or go on the internet and see the news of someone having died frozen on the street. There's some people that don't want to see the unhoused people because they make them uncomfortable. But the thing that makes you uncomfortable is knowing that there are actual people dying on the street because they got no place to go when it's cold. Of the two, that pushes your ick button a little more or significantly more. And you would like to make that clear. If enough of us do that, maybe we won't still be asking them to open warming centers still in February, March. They might actually have them planned and enough of them earlier on. Sorry, the issue makes me mad. It's just, I do not understand looking at people that do not have a place to live in Canada when we know we have winter. And the first thought is not, let's get them shelter. It should be, wait, you're unhoused? Let's fix that. That's not okay. But it's always some other thought that comes up first. It just does not make sense to me. I think my little social justice warrior thing today is is a little invoked. Words of wisdom, kits and cubs. My not so much words. Well, I guess yeah, they can be words of wisdom. I can frame them that way. Had a great experience yesterday at curling, kits and cubs. As you know, if you've been following my social media feeds, I've been experiencing a certain amount of frustration because I think we are now at 8 out of the last 11 matches, not including last night, where something absolutely weird or freaky or has happened to cause us to lose. And yesterday that was happening again. And we managed to scramble. We were doing really well. And it came the very, very last shot, an open hit. And as soon as my skip let go of the rock, it picked up something on the ice and started skidding that way. And I was like, oh, come on, not again. And the other team, in one of the most wonderful displays of sportsmanship I've personally been a part of. I've witnessed some, like, at the Olympics once. I think there was a Norwegian cross country skier who lost to ski at some point for some way, and there's a Canadian that came along and made sure that they had skis so that they could finish the race, which was great sportsmanship there too. But in terms of sportsmanship that I've personally been affected by, this was probably the best moment. Uh, and as soon as the rock started going sideways, that's the end of the match. The other team wins. That's it. The skip from the other team go, no, 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 go back and throw it again. And that's not. We don't want to win a close game like that. And we're like, seriously? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's nobody wants to win a match like that. Most people was like, you know what? I'll take it. Sucks, but win's a win. So they were clear on it, so we went back to the hack and we made the shot. Now it was an open hit on nose. So I mean, technically when we were talking after the match, he said, listen, you had us dead to rights. All you had to do was throw the shot, really. I mean, it would have taken something exceptional for it not to work, and you would have hit, you guys would have won. So that was part of the feeling behind it. But the fact that the team at the point had the win, because those are the rules. It's like, if you rock picks, you rock picks. And said, no, that's not how we want to win. If we want to win, we want to win and go out. It really, really, really touched me. And we had conversation after, right? Because in curling, the winning team buys the losing team a drink, and great conversation with the other skip, who's just, like I said, he embodies the gentlemanly spirit of the game. So my long way to get there, but my words of wisdom would be, in whatever way it manifests for you in your life, go out and win the Good Sportsmanship Award today. Give someone some credit. Give someone a pat on the back. Be a team player. Help someone. You got time to help me? Yeah, I do today. Do something. But just, give someone a second chance if they flub or something. But whatever way that manifests, go out and be a good sportsman. Show some sportsmanship. It's the best I got today. All right, kids and cubs. I guess that leaves me with saying, Mr. Beaver, I think it's time for you to cue the cock. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kits and cubs, I have a little Easter egg for you, particularly for those among the audience who may be supporters of the Federal Liberal Party and actually do like the Prime Minister and would like him to have another term because the numbers in the news and all that kind of stuff has been rather bleak for him. But a little ray of sunshine, perhaps, according to BNN Bloomberg, since we're talking about things money today. And this is by Brian Platt there. Canadians trust in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to deal with the U.S. Sorry, let's try that again. Canadians trust in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to deal with incoming U.S. President Donald Trump is growing, a new survey suggests. Trudeau is now effectively tied with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre on the question of who is best to negotiate with Trump, according to the poll from Nanos Research Group for Bloomberg News. That's a significant improvement for him from January when Trudeau trailed Poilievre by 11 points on the same question. Overall, 34% of Canadians picked Trudeau and 36% went to Poilievre when asked who would be the best to manage Trump, a gap that's within the poll's margin of error of 3%. A further 23% said there's no difference between the leaders. Further 23%, you might need to sharpen your observation and discernment skills. Sorry, that was maybe a little petty on my part. The poll surveyed 1,084 Canadians from November 30th to December 4th, just after a highly publicized dinner meeting between the president-elect and prime minister in Florida. So it seems that the wheels up and let's go to Mar-a-Lago definitely helped. And yes, I'm not sure which kit says it here. I think it might be PNC Bio. No, playing with 3D. Well, and I'm going to put that up there since I can do that now. Haha. There we go. Well, Trump threatening us twice might have a little to do with that. Keep it up, Trump. Indeed. So that's what I'm saying. I have a little theory in my head that, like I said, given that Trump is the TV president, he would actually probably prefer that Trudeau remain and not have Poilievre, if he had his choice. So I think maybe a lot of that might be giving Trudeau an opportunity to stand up for Canada and silence PP. Could be, if that's what's going on here. Trump has created shockwaves in Canada and Mexico with this threat to impose across-the-board tariffs of 25% on goods from those countries unless they do more to stop the flow of fentanyl and irregular migration across U.S. borders. The Nanos survey is a rare example of good polling news for Trudeau, whose Liberal Party still badly trails the Conservatives. The latest public opinion surveys put Poilievre's party ahead by about 20 percentage points, with an election scheduled to take place by October 2025. There's still a strong desire for change in the Canadian electorate, said Nick Nanos, chief data scientist and founder of the polling firm. But Trudeau's improved standing on the issue of dealing with the new U.S. administration suggests there may be a path forward for the Liberals. And this particular quote, kits and cubs, is very, very important. And I want you to pay attention. If the ballot question in the next election is not about change, but who could best advance Canada's interests in discussions with the Americans, the playing field may be more even between the Liberals and Conservatives. Justin Trudeau has a track record of dealing with Trump and has concluded one set of free trade negotiations. Poilievre will need to clearly articulate how he would manage the relationship differently and successfully. So Pierre Poilievre has been campaigning on wanting a carbon tax election for the better part of the last 2 years. It seems there's a very distinct possibility he may not get that. What he may get instead is an election on who's best to handle Trump. And considering what the nations have seen of PP since Trump started talking tariffs, he doesn't have the stuff. Like, he painfully doesn't have the stuff. And perhaps the last few weeks um, started revealing that to Canadians at the moment. And it's showing up in these numbers. Time is not PP's friend. And you got to keep him talking. But maybe there is a glimmer of hope and there is a path. Because again, it may involve the Liberals pushing to the side some social justice rhetoric, some rhetoric on environment, and sticking strictly to economic issues, national security, and do we really want to trust this guy to negotiate with Trump? I've done it before. So, and Trump respects me. Now, the 51st state and calling him the governor of Canada and stuff like, probably doesn't, but still doesn't change the fact that Trump took the call. And when the prime minister said, how about dinner? Trump was the one that said, how about Friday? There might be more going on behind the scenes. And then, of course, you have Doug Ford's all little maneuvering as well. So we'll see what's going on. But this number here, right, especially since it appears in BNN and Bloomberg, the financial publication of record here in Canada. Well, that's not true. We have the Financial Times as well. I shouldn't forget them. But BNN and Bloomberg, I mean, that's their thing. Business. It's the business news network. So this is news I assume will have landed like a lead balloon in the Conservative Party of Canada camp. And I can't say I'm sad about it. All right, kids, cubs, bit of a long Easter egg, but thought I would give a little, since we are quote unquote as our friends. I keep on saying our friends. I want them to be our friends, but we don't know them yet. At the Daily Beans have called it microdosing hope. Since we are microdosing hope, if you happen to be a Liberal Party fan or a Trudeau fan, there's a little bit of hope for you there. Sorry, the Financial Post, not the Financial Times. Thank you, Kit PNC Bio. And thank you also, can't remember which Kit yesterday that caught me yesterday saying that we were December 12th instead of December 10th. I read the month as the date. So thank you, everyone for that. I appreciate you all. Everyone, go out and have a magical, wonderful, stellar, and beaverific day. And we will see you tomorrow, hopefully with Grizzly, and hopefully without half an hour of before the show starts. Love you all. Whoops. And then we have to do the thing. There we go.